Good evening. Hi.
Hello.
Woo. Welcome, everybody. Man, so before I get started, I just want to talk about last night. We got into the jail again last night. And
Gerald was really excited. He was so excited.
Gerald didn't know what to do with me, man. I just like pulled that poor boy. Because Kevin just decided on me. They actually let 5 people in this time, which is really good. And Gerald was one of them. And I just said to Gerald, I said, man, right, Kevin asked me to lead it, right? But I just said, Gerald, you're leading it. And it took him by surprise. He said, I said, what did you say to me? Always ready. So be ready.
Yeah.
Just go. And it was really a good time. He was awesome. He didn't like being constrained to time, but we have to be constrained to time. Yeah, we had 25 minutes, and he could talk for 55 minutes if he wanted to. But we said, look, you just got 25 minutes, and he got it down. The second pod and the third pod, he got it down, and it was really good. They are open, right? And the people who are coming into the pod, yes, they want to get out of the pods, right, and get a bit of a break. But most of them, because we play some music to them on a speaker, a JBL speaker. Like this guy writes music, and he plays them, and some of them are really good. And the one was something about Satan is after you, right? The words on that, you could suddenly see people, suddenly their demeanor changed, and they were listening, and they were like attentive, and it was just awesome. And that allowed Gerald to then get up and then just share a little bit, you know what I mean? And it was good. They were receptive. We asked them, if there's anything that we can do for them and pray for them, right? And they were willing to be prayed over, and they got up for prayer. We had one pod who just wanted to do the Lord's Prayer, and we had the Lord's Prayer spoken with all of those men just almost shouting out the Lord's Prayer, and it was just a moving moment. And then there was one guy, I think in the first pod, that I recognized him, and I recognized him from the first time I was in, and he just said, how do I connect when I get out? I said, oh, that's very easy. I said, Crystal Rock, Wow Church, any church, Celebrate Recovery. People already know about Outcast. A lot of people already know about Outcast. You're probably going to get some people reach out to you, Brian, because some people said they were going to try and hit you up somehow, right? But in there, they're limited in their resources, right? But this one guy, he just said, what do I do? I said, so are you getting out soon? He says, no. I said, 3 years, right? And I said, okay. And he says, but I want to tell you that when you came in last time, you prayed for me, right? You and 2 others prayed for me because I was facing life in jail, right? That's what he said. He was going to have a life sentence. That's what they offered him, 20 to life. And he said, you prayed over that specifically. And then what happened was that they gave him 5 years instead. And he was happy with 5 years, right? Because if you're going to face 20 to life, right, and then you say 5 years, I'll be dancing in the, right? And so he'd be out in 3, right? So, and that was exciting. And there were some people there wanting to connect with us when they get out, and I said, look, we're not hard to find, right? There's some things that, like, if you're on addiction, there are some things that you need to do. You need to probably get connected with Celebrate Recovery. You need to get connected with recovery houses, right? Halfway houses. They all know about Broadway. They know about Outcast, right? They know about Oxford houses. I said, but as soon as you get out, the first thing that you must do, right, is go somewhere and get connected, right? You just don't go back, right? I said, and the first time you get available, you come to church. I don't care which church you go to a church, right? And they were saying, okay, yeah. I said, because if you don't, your chance of repeating is going to be the same, right? Because at the end of the day, if you keep doing the same things over and over, you keep getting the same results over and over, right? So you have to have an active change in your ideas and your actions, right? So it was good. They were open. They wanted us to pray. The worship was good. Gerald was good. He was floating again, right? I have to keep bringing him down. I think we have to start tying him to a balloon thing, right? And just like, so when he walks out, stay here. But that's good for him, man.
Yeah,
it's good for him, and
suddenly he didn't have anything wrong with him.
right,
It's
right. And like I don't want to talk about him personally while we're on the thing, but this, it was good because some people have been praying with him and for him, and then suddenly the change of demeanor starts, right? Because it's easy for us to get stuck,
He was
right?
at my house this morning, like I said.
Yeah,
So he was
yeah,
a great guy.
yeah. And we're going in on Thursday. I get to go in. So Kevin himself, Spradlin, is going to go in on Thursday with me and 2 others, and that's going to be.
His brother went too?
No, not his brother, just with 2 other brothers from the church, right? So, and he hasn't been in yet, right? He's allowed other people. He just wanted to have a little sneak look, you know what I mean? And the story, how this happened, right? No, I can't share that now, but I'll share it to you offline, right, about how we have got favor, right? A miraculous favor, right? There's just a story that I can tell you off the record that how we got into the jail, and it's just God.
We keep getting more favor.
Just getting more favor, man.
Man on front,
Yep,
he's a favor.
yep. And then there's other.
Brother,
There are some other. He's half asleep.
I was telling somebody from my hometown that today. I told these guys when I talked, I said, man, I may have said it from up here. You know, if you knew all that God had done for me,
Yep.
you'd be jealous, but He'll do it for you too.
Yep.
But literally miracle after miracle.
They're a captive audience, literally, right? And they're open. And a lot of them, you can see on their demeanor that they don't want to be there, but then it's the consequences of their choices, right? You can do everything you want in life. I say this to everybody. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. You can do anything you want. Are you going to be okay with the consequences of the decisions you make? And most of the people aren't at the time, right? Or afterwards they say, man, I wish I hadn't done that, right? So I was like that. And God said to me one day, He said, if you don't want consequences, don't do things that bring you consequences.
or only the things that bring good consequences.
Right, right. But that time, I was not doing things that were bringing good consequences. I was just making irrational, rash decisions, right? And only by God's grace that I didn't get... We know about God's grace, right? Not getting what we deserve, man. And I'm grateful for that. Boy, oh boy, am I grateful. So keep praying. The other good news is that we are going to go in twice a month now. So we'll be in on Thursday, and then not the following week, but the week after we'll be on Tuesday and Thursday, right?
Are they going to let us in the women's?
Not yet, but there are some, we believe that we have God's favor in there, right? And there was already somebody on the women's side that get in there, right? We don't know too much about it, but we believe at some point we'll have allow a team of women to go in there. So if you are wanting to get involved in that ministry in any shape or form, let me know so that we can start getting you involved, right? Right.
He's came to the house and he's looking for a guy. He wasn't there though. He wasn't one of
Oh, it's to your
I
house?
guess he used to be there or something.
Okay, yeah. So that's be good. And Kevin, he's just an interesting character. I love just talking to him, man. And he's got a vision, right, just the same. And we love talking about the vision, and it's a shared vision.
That's awesome.
Man, and I'm going to start meeting with him on a regular basis on a Saturday morning, right? Won't be this weekend, but the next weekend I'm going to start meeting with him on a Saturday morning. He has a warehouse out here somewhere, right? So I think this is building relationships, right? I'm just interested that I get this in the thing, right? Because I'm about building relationships with everybody around, you know what I mean? So it's about that. And then Kevin was saying that he's got somebody coming on his team that's going to that has a access to prison ministries as well as jail ministries, and there's a difference, right? And that's something that I'm excited about as well. Because I had signed up for prison ministry a long time ago, back in the Fort Worth area, but it never came through. And you have to go through you have to pass background checks for that and everything, right? It's not easy to get into the prisons, right? Huh? You can't have felons. There has been some exceptions made.
Oh, yeah, I know a guy that's
Yeah.
been to prison 7, 8 times that's in. He goes, but,
Yeah. In Texas, it was a little bit difficult. The
you
different.
got to be vetted though.
Yeah, you have to be vetted, right? And you have to be part of a ministry that's going in, right? You just can't just go in. Wacky Willie can't just walk in and say, I want to go in, right? So I'm excited about a lot of stuff that's happening at the moment. So just keep praying, right? Because the prayers are being answered. That just to heard that man and to see the grin on his face when he actually opened up and said, "Yeah, I was 20 to life into 5." Man, I know I would have been happy. You know what I mean? And he'd be out in 3. And he knew Jim, and he knew this church. He says, "I know where you are. I'll be there." I said,
I hope
"Okay."
he takes advantage
Yeah.
of the opportunity God's given.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Always remember that.
And there's a man who goes in, right, that he had been sentenced to 75 years, right? And he was surrendered to the fact that he was never going to get out, right? Because he's an older man, and after 25 years, out of nowhere, he found favor and was released. So his heart now is, I've got to give back to the God who gave me something, gave me freedom again. And he's an older gentleman, and they call him Grizzly, I think. You may know him, I don't know, or come across him. His story is amazing. 75 years to 25 and out. That's unheard of for the most part, right? So keep praying, man. It's exciting times. So. Okay, so where we are, man, Philippians, yeah. So last week when we walked through Philippians, we went through the first 3 verses, right? And we looked at conflict and how conflict should be handled. And specifically, we looked at 2 women in Paul's church who weren't getting along. Imagine that. It could be 2 men who can't get along. I've known that too as well, right? So it wasn't just women. But, it was Judea and Sintish who were the 2 people. And what we talked about is how Paul did something that most people, right, would find a little bit surprising, and they would find it a little bit uncomfortable. Right? I think you said, "Don't you dare speak to me like that from..." Right? Firstly, he named them very publicly, right? Okay? I know that turned a few heads when we talked about it, like, "Oh, don't do that here, Wayne." And he appealed to them because they belonged to the Lord, and that he turned to the church and asked for someone to help them, right? And so he wasn't leaving those 2 women to try and fix it alone. He was about the whole body doing the work of reconciliation together, which is what should happen, right? And see, most of us, though, have been taught that conflict between believers is a private matter, right? And that something you keep between the 2 of you, something you handle behind closed doors, something you don't drag anyone else into. But last week we also saw that Jesus himself told us how this actually worked. If you remember, we looked at Matthew 18, and Matthew 18 says, first you go to the person privately. Now, if that person doesn't say, "No, I don't accept this," what you do, if they don't listen to you, you then go back with 1 or 2 others to try and address it. And if they still don't listen, if that doesn't work, you take it to the church, right? So 3 steps. Each one becomes wider than the last one, right? So it's privately, a couple of people, and then it's the church. And I want us to look what Paul is doing in Philippians, right? When he's naming these 2 women publicly in a letter to the whole church, because if you remember, we said this in when we were in Ephesians, right? That what they do is that the person who's carrying the letter is the person who stands before the church and reads the letter, right? So when he's saying these 2 people here, it's going to be very public. And that sounds like that he was almost missing the first 2 parts that Jesus modeled in Matthew 14. But I don't think he is, because I think that really what happened, I think what you're seeing in Philippians 4 is really step 3 in action, right? I think that they've probably, the private conversations have already probably happened. The one-on-one appeals have probably been made. And when private steps couldn't finish the job, what Paul did is what Jesus said to do, which is like, he took it to the church, right? So I think that's the model that we should follow. And I think that here in Philippians is that they've already tried to do probably 1 and 2, and they're on 3 now. So they aren't 2 different teachings, and I really wanted to make that clear because I think some people picked up on about, well, you're supposed to do this. Matthew 18 says this. I just wanted to reiterate that. Right, these are 2 ends of the same process, right? So when we walked away with things like, right, I want you not to forget a couple of things, right? Time doesn't heal conflicts. It normally buries them. That real love doesn't ignore conflicts either. It tends to move towards it gently. And Paul's pattern is that love first, name the issue, get help. That's the model, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to jump into verses 4 to 7 now, and we're going to hear three of probably the most famous verses in the New Testament. These are verses that you're going to have heard all your whole life, right? They've been quoted at you probably. You've seen them on printed cards. You've most probably seen them in social media memes, right? They've been hung on walls, but most of the time they've been mostly misunderstood. And I told you a few weeks ago that when we did the overview of Philippians 4, I told you that those verses, we're going to hear them like Paul wrote them. That's the intent, right? Not like Hallmark sells them or like social media memes try to sell them to us. We're going to start delivering on what are those first 4 verses we're about to read. That 3 of them that everyone in this room knows. Rejoice in the Lord always. Do not be anxious about anything. And the peace of God will guard your hearts and minds. Right? And if I'm going to be honest with you, I've quoted those verses at people over the years many times. Yep. And I've done that without truly understanding what Paul actually meant by the verses in the context that he means them. And so I was losing something. So I kind of use them like slogans. I use them on band-aids on people's lives, right? You try to say something who is hurting, okay, it's okay, don't be anxious about anything, that kind of thing, right? And when you're doing that, you're not actually helping them half the time, right? And it wasn't until I stopped and actually read them and read what they really meant that I realized that I was always reading them wrong. I was misunderstanding what they meant. So what we're going to try and look at today is what Paul actually meant when he was doing this, okay? So the first one, if we go and bring up, I'm going to go the 4 to 5, okay? So always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember that the Lord is coming soon. So I'm going to give you the coffee mug version of that verse. Be happy all the time, no matter what. Even when your world is falling apart, even when someone you love is dying, even when the bills are piling up, just be happy. I think that's sometimes how we usually hear it, right? Be happy. That is not what Paul is saying here. And I know that, right, because of who wrote it. Paul wrote this from prison, right? He's in chains. He's awaiting trial. He's not knowing whether he's going to live or die. And you cannot tell me at that moment that Paul was happy. Right? He wasn't smiling all day long, I know that. Again, the cheesy grin, right? Like, it's okay, everything's okay, I'm being happy. You cannot tell me that his circumstances did not give him things to grieve, because I think they gave him things to grieve. So Paul, I don't believe, was happy, but he certainly was rejoicing. Those 2 words don't mean the same thing, but people connect them as if they do. Happiness depends on what's happening, right? Joy depends on where you're anchored. Now, look at the 4 words that make this verse work. Can you go back to 4? Okay. In the Lord. Okay? Paul doesn't say rejoice in your circumstances. He doesn't say rejoice in your health. He doesn't say rejoice in your marriage. He doesn't say rejoice in your finances. He says rejoice in the Lord. Because at the end of the day, right, your circumstances and everything else will change on any given moment. But the one thing that doesn't change is the Lord, right? So your circumstances change, your health changes, your marriage will have hard seasons, trust me, I know. Your finances will rise and they will fall, but the Lord is the Lord, right? Yesterday, today, and forever, He is the Lord. So if you anchor your joy to Him, then when everything else in your life moves, because I promise you, everything in your life will move at some point, because we're just humans having human experiences, right? and we just got personalities, and I'm not looking at anybody, but I know that sometimes marriages get difficult, right? And I know that sometimes you lose your job, or sometimes you've run out of money, whatever it is, right? They will change, but the Lord never changes. So if you anchor your joy in Him, then when all of that other stuff comes along, which it will do, your joy doesn't have to leave you. I may not be happy in my lot, and there are times right now that I'm not happy in my lot, right? But I do know that I have joy in Him. So now watch what the next thing Paul does. There it says, I say it again, rejoice. Paul rarely repeats himself in the same breath. I don't know if you noticed that. You go back through some of his stuff, he rarely repeats himself like that. So when he does, it's because he knows you probably didn't hear it the first time, right? So what he's saying is he's not being repetitive deliberately, he's being emphatic, right? He's reinforcing a point. He's saying, I know how this sounds. I know your circumstances. I know what you've been going through. And I know why joy sometimes feels impossible to us. But what I'm telling you again is, rejoice, right? That's what he's saying to us. Because sometimes I think that Paul knew this, that those commands would seem impossible to us sometimes. I know that sometimes I've carried the weight of something, and rejoicing is probably the last thing on my mind, right? So he says it twice, not to be pushy, but I think what he's trying to do, he's wanting you to make sure that you know it, right? That you have to rejoice in the Lord. So let's go back to 5 a minute, please, sir. Look what comes next. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. The Greek word here is ipekasi or something like that, right? It's a hard word to translate. Some Bible translations say it means considerate, others say it means gentle, some say reasonable, yet others say forbearing. It's the picture of someone who doesn't insist on their own way. Someone who is easy to deal with. Do you know people who are easy to deal with? I know some people who are easy to deal with. Someone whose first move is always defaults to gentleness and not defensiveness. And I think this is the reason why Paul puts it straight after the rejoice command. Because a person who is rejoicing in the Lord isn't fighting to defend themselves anymore, right? Because they don't have to. Because their joy isn't at stake in every conversation. Their identity isn't on the line in every disagreement that they have, and we will have disagreements. Their peace isn't dependent on winning every argument. I can allow you to be right. Sometimes. So that kind of person can afford to be gentle. So I really believe that if your joy is anchored in the Lord, then that makes you gentle people. And I like how Paul closes verse 5 with this line, remember, the Lord is coming soon. That is the anchor behind the anchor. Does that make sense?
Say again.
When he's saying that, remember that the Lord is coming soon, that is the anchor behind the anchor that he's already stated. So the anchor is joy in the Lord, right? But the Lord coming soon is the anchor behind that anchor. Does that make sense? Second? Bookends, that's it. There you go. Thank you. Bookends. Yeah. Why can you rejoice in the Lord? Because you know he's coming soon, right? This is the good news. And it's really good news. We're not going to be here forever. Thank goodness for that. This trial, all the trials that we go through in our life, and sometimes they're trials, sometimes they're ordeals, this life will not last forever. This suffering is not going to last forever. Somewhere down the line, the Lord is coming. Justice is coming. Home is coming, right? Which means really that all your circumstances right now, all the stuff that you're going through, they have a shelf life. Right? They've got a shelf life. But your joy in the Lord does not have a shelf life. So let's go to verse 6, please, sir. Do not be anxious about anything. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all that he has done. So you want the coffee mug version of that one? I'll give it you. Stop being anxious, right? Stop worrying. Take a deep breath. Yeah. Trust God. Fake it till you make it, right? Have you heard that?
No, that's a good.
Fake it till you make it. Just have a little more faith. Do you ever remember that song, Faith? You got to have faith. Just got to have faith. Can't remember his name now. He's British. Huh? George Michael, yeah? You just got to have faith. I won't sing too much. Yes, he was. Yeah. This, do not be anxious about anything, has been quoted at more hurting people than I could have to imagine. That's probably more than any other of his verses in Paul's letters. It's been used at someone in the middle of a panic attack, right? At a parent whose child is in the hospital, at a spouse whose marriage is falling apart. Do not... Are you okay there, Brian? Do not be anxious about anything. Be anxious for nothing, right? What I want you to know is that Paul isn't saying that prayer replaces medication, for example, for someone with diagnosed anxiety disorder, right? Paul is talking about the spiritual response to fear that any believer can practice, right? Alongside whatever medical care you may need. I have seen this being used so badly to tell people, get off your medication and do not be anxious about anything. And I have seen nightmares as a result of that. Don't do that. Seek medical help. Seek medical advice. Right? What? No, right? Rex just said, I sure don't want to. But I'm going to tell you that I've seen this verse misused on people, right? Get off your meds. You just pray. Don't be anxious about anything, right? Instead, you've got to pray about it, right? No, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. I think that prayer does not replace medication. I really believe that the spiritual response to fear is any believer can practice prayer in their life while they're still having something, right?
You got 6,000 years of everything that was done wrong. It's lighting us up, and our brain is just.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's just craziness.
Yep. Yeah.
6,000 years doing stuff wrong.
Yep.
Catches up with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm just,
But God is good.
God is good.
Amen. All the
So
time.
the bottom line is that, be anxious for nothing, right? It's as if quoting a verse that someone is drowning is the same as pulling them out the water. No. When you're drowning, don't come up and say, don't be anxious about anything. You better put your hand in and help them out, right?
Yeah.
The word, I want you to understand, right, that what Paul is saying here is that the Greek word for worry here is a word called merimenate, right? So it literally means to be pulled in pieces, right? To be divided into parts. So in the picture, it's the picture of a mind being torn apart by concerns, right? Which is what literally is happening to us. Pulled one way by what might happen, the woulda, coulda, shouldas, or the what ifs, right? A lot of people are in the what ifs. Well, if I do this, then this may happen. If I do that, and then I do that, then this may happen. Well, okay. Don't get stuck in the what ifs. Pulled another way by what he already has, okay? Pulled another way by what you can't fix. You can't fix people. I want you to know that. Okay? I may upset a few people, but you can't fix people. This one is the woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? This is pulled another way by what you should have done differently, right? If only I'd done that, then maybe this wouldn't have happened and I wouldn't be in this mess. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Doesn't matter. You are here right now in this mess. Right? Huh? I still can't hear you there, Gigi. You have to be loud, lady.
You can't cry over spilled milk.
That's it. You can't cry over spilled milk. Exactly. Thank you. So what Paul, he's not telling someone in this state of anxiety, just stop. He's not doing that. You can't stop being torn apart. Has anybody been anxious? Let's have their hands up. Who's been anxious? Brian, you've not been anxious? Never? Oh, Brian, okay, there you go. I know he's been anxious about some things in his life, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This is what I've learned. Willpower does not get you out of anxiety, right? I have tried willpower to say, I'm not going to be anxious, I'm not going to be anxious. And the more I say I'm not going to be anxious, the more anxious I become, right? Positive thinking doesn't work either. Do you ever remember Kelly's Heroes? Yeah. Donald Sutherland on the tank? Yeah. Think positive vibes, man. Right? That doesn't work.
Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah. That's it. It was in Kelly's Heroes. Yeah. Positive thinking doesn't work.
You ever notice, like, if it's somebody else's situation, like, for instance, you're talking to those guys that are facing a life sentence.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say with actual, not fake faith to them, don't worry, this is in God's hands. He controls the judge, everything, right? And you have 100%
Oh, yeah.
faith in God. But if it were your situation, you would say, oh my gosh, life, you know?
Yeah, man, yeah.
But there comes a certain point that I don't envy anyone get to, in which you just say, okay, no, that I don't care, but okay, God, if this is what you have me do, then I'll start a ministry in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a point when you're facing enough that
Yeah, man.
some of those guys end up being some of the most
Powerful people.
behind
Yeah.
bars ever.
Because that guy, Grizzly, 75 years, reduced to 25, and he gets out. So he's done the 25, and suddenly they thought that they were transferring him to another unit, which is whatever, and no, they had transferred him to the other unit so that they could start paroling him out. And I'm like, can you imagine what's for him? He said, and he actually says it when he's there, and he says that this is the only thing I can do. I've got to give back to my God who gave me my life back. Right? Now, I'm pretty sure that, there's a point when you're in a 75-year sentence, you're not worrying about anything anymore. You've lost hope probably at that point, and you say, this is it, right? That young man who was 25 to life, he just said, all I want is prayer. Can you pray for me? And we prayed. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is pray for peace, and so that passes understanding to come into his mind. But he still had to go in front of that judge. And I'm going to imagine what he must have been like sitting in front of that judge. Expecting to get 25 to life, and they just said, 5 years. With 10 years supervised, I think, right? The parole, basically, right?
I mean, it kind of tells you that his heart is softened.
Oh, yeah.
Only God does that.
Yep. So now he knows what mercy is. Yeah, now he knows what mercy is, right? But I'm pretty sure that you couldn't have told him not to be anxious about anything in the moment he was going to be, when they brought him up, right? Or brought him into the courtroom. Yeah. Yeah. Telling yourself to trust God doesn't automatically produce trust. This was God's story to me all the time. He just says, Wayne, I need you to trust in the trusting. And I would get mad at him. Like, what do you mean, trust in the trusting? That's just ridiculous, God. Right? Until one time I asked him, what does it mean to trust in the trusting? And he says, trust in the process of trusting that I will take care of it, right? And what actually trusting him means is, am I going to allow him to do it? Because God used to say to me, your knowledge is great, your faith is great, but your trust is really poor. And I said, well, what does that mean? He says, you have to let me do it. See, because what I want to do is because I know God can do all things, but there's a part of me that's in this stress state, right? And you've been in this stress state. I probably need to do some things, right? To bring action. I need to do something. I need to chase. And God's just saying, trust in the trusting process. It's a process to trust me, Wayne. So trust in that process of trusting me. Let me in and let me do it. That was a hard one, man. That took a long time. I trust him for a little bit, and then I'm like, no, he don't know what he's doing. He needs my help. So then I would start trying to interfere, and then suddenly ending up in messes, you know. So telling yourself to trust God doesn't automatically produce trust. I know that to be true. So what is Paul actually saying here? He says, look at the actually sentence, right? Don't worry about anything, but then he puts another word in here called instead. Right? You've got to take note of the instead, because you've got to look at what's following, what the instead is really going to mean. Instead. That word right there is doing everything. So Paul isn't really saying stop being anxious. Paul is saying replace your anxiety with something else. You're probably not going to like this when I say this, but it's true. Anxiety and prayer cannot occupy the same place at the same time. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. You cannot be praying and then worrying about the same thing simultaneously. It doesn't work. One will always displace the other. And Paul is now telling us which one has to move. So what he's saying is that he's not saying stop worrying. He's saying start praying about the thing that you are worrying about. Yeah? And look at the specific instructions. Instead, right, everything that's following is going to be important. Pray about everything. Right? Paul gives us 3 parts, right? So he's pray about everything, tell God what you need, and thank him for what he has done. Okay, so there are 3 parts here. So the first part is prayer. That's general, broad, and very open. You come to God with what's on your heart. Second is the petition. It's very specific. Name it. Not vague requests, right? Everybody comes, name the specific thing that you want to pray about, not go around it in like circles.
You never know if it got answered.
Right. And not just say a prayer like, just bless everyone, right? No, bless Gigi,
Amen.
right? Okay. Actual asks, as I said. Is that a word? Yes, it is. Asks, right? Right? Father, I need this rent paid. Father, I need this child to come home. Father, I need help with what is coming tomorrow because I can't face it. And the third part of it is thanksgiving. This is the part that most of us skip. Yep. Paul says, don't just ask, thank him for what he already has done. Because when you name what God has done in the past, you are reminding yourself who you are dealing with in the present. Do you want to write that down, Gigi? Oh, you know that one by heart. You are anchoring your prayer in what God has already done, not just in what he might do. Petition names what you need. Thanksgiving names who you are trusting. Okay? Let's go to verse 7, please, sir. The peace that guards. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Let me give you the coffee mug version of that one. God will make you feel better. A warm, fuzzy sense of calm. A quiet, peaceful heart. Everything will feel okay. That is not what peace means here. The Greek word for guard, right, is phoreo. It's a military term. It means to stand guard as a garrison, right? A garrison, right, you know what a garrison is. It's soldiers stationed at a very strategic point. Maybe to defend a city. They don't leave. They don't sleep. Well, they rotate their sleeps, right? They stand watch. They protect. So we'll look at what the picture Paul is painting here. What he is saying is, your heart and your mind are a city. And when you replace anxiety with prayer, the peace of God moves in and stands guard. So this is what this changes for us. The peace of God is not a feeling. And if you're trying to chase a feeling, stop. It's not a feeling. It's a defense system. It doesn't come in and make you smile, right? It doesn't. What peace does, it comes in and stands watch. And then you can let go, right? Because what's it against? What's guarding against what? Against the return of anxiety. Against your mind being pulled apart again. Against old Slewfoot, as I like to call him, whispering, God ain't going to come through for you. It's guarding against the temptation to take it all back onto your own shoulders. You ever done that? Yeah?
Sure was heavy.
Huh?
Yeah, sure was heavy.
Yeah. But we take it back in a minute because we don't think that we don't have that peace within us, right? I love this. Peace is not the absence of trouble. It's the garrison that holds you together when trouble comes. And I promise you, trouble will come at some point in your life, right? And the one thing that Paul says in that first section, he says, this peace will exceed anything we can understand. In other words, it doesn't make sense. Given the circumstances sometimes, right, whatever those circumstances are, given those circumstances, you shouldn't have peace, right?
When you know this is what helps me, Mike, when I know he's standing right there with me.
Right,
He's literally got me.
right. That's the guarding, right?
Because
Right.
he's got me.
Yeah,
If I can get my mind to where he's there, I'm done. It's over.
right.
Move safe.
That's the guardian of your heart and your mind, which is the city, right? So it's important because given some of our circumstances, we shouldn't have peace. That man who was facing 25 or 20 to life shouldn't have had any kind of peace because his circumstances were going to tell him, man, you're going to go down, boy, right? He had reasons to be anxious. Given what you're facing sometimes, you shouldn't be able to sleep, right? Given the diagnosis, maybe sometimes you shouldn't be able to breathe, right? Catch your breath sometimes, right? But you do. Isn't that amazing? You still function. Because the peace doesn't come from your circumstances making sense. I want to make sense of them. I want to order everything so it's all in my own, up here, my own understanding, right? His peace exceeds anything that I could ever understand. Do you know where it comes from instead? This peace comes from someone bigger than my circumstances. And when people watch you walking through all that you're walking through, they will not be able to explain sometimes why you're still standing. That is the peace of God. And I love this part. That Paul closes right here, right, in Christ Jesus. So the peace that he's given us has an address, right? The address is in Christ Jesus. It doesn't float around like, come here, right? It just doesn't come to anyone who just wants a calmer life. Because if it did that, I would have had it a long time ago, I promise you. It lives in Christ. Which means to have it, you have to be in him. So let's quickly look at what Paul has given us in these 4 verses. What he's done is a whole inner life, right? Verses 4 to 5 is about your heart. Rejoice in the Lord, and that joy makes you gentle. Verse 6 is your response to fear. The peace of God, right? So when worry comes, what you have to do is you replace it with prayer instead. Okay? Then this verse 7, it tells us about your mind. The peace of God stands guard so that the worry doesn't have to come back. So it's heart, how we respond, and our mind. That's the whole inside of every believer. And it just doesn't just work in pieces. You can't rejoice in the Lord without letting him guard your mind. You can't have the peace of God without replacing anxiety with prayer. And you can't pray honestly without being anchored in joy. That doesn't depend on the circumstances. It's all one life, right? So joy anchors the heart, prayer displaces the worry, and peace stands guard so worry doesn't come back. I don't know about you, but I think some of us, certainly me, I've been reading these verses like slogans for years, right? Sometimes using them as a weapon without meaning to use them as a weapon. Sometimes hurting people without realizing that I'm hurting people, right? See, rejoice always sometimes feels like it's a demand. Be anxious for nothing, right? It feels like an accusation on us. The peace of God, and we wondered why we never seem to have it. Maybe tonight, hearing them actually how Paul meant them to be heard is the first time they have felt like good news for us. See, joy isn't a demand, it's an anchor. Peace isn't a feeling, it's a garrison. And prayer isn't just a religious duty. And that's what many people believe it is, just a religious duty. It's the mechanism that God has given you to move worry out of the room. And let his peace stand guard in its place. So as always, I'd like to give you 4 questions, Gigi.
Where my sheets at?
Hey, good point. I will make a note that I'll probably forget. Who would actually help with a sheet? Yep, okay, I'll start working on a sheet. Okay, 4 questions that I'm going to let you sit with. You ready?
Yes.
Where is my joy anchored right now? In the Lord, or in something that can move? Huh?
False idol. A false idol.
A false idol. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay. When worry comes, and I promise you, worry will always come, do I replace it with prayer? Or do I just carry the worry? Okay. Is the peace of God standing guard in me, or am I still trying to defend myself?
Trying to hoop myself.
Or trying to defend myself?
Ready.
Okay. Which of these 3 verses that we've read? 4 verses. I just realized that when I said it. Which of these 4 verses? Well, they're actually in 3 blocks. It's 4 and 5, then 6, and then 7, right? So, which of these verses did I need to hear most? Which did I most need to hear fresh tonight? You get that? Yeah. And what I want to leave you is that the verses haven't changed. The verses are still the same verses as they've always been. But maybe tonight we've changed in how we see them. No longer as coffee mug slogans or social media memes, because that's where I see most of them. I said always that we can take the Bible whatever way we want and beat it over somebody's head if we want to, right? I hope that what we do is that what we do together is we really dig into what really God is saying about these verses, about everything that we're doing. I have done it myself. I've been guilty of it. I no longer try to do that. I try to take these and I live them in my life today, right? So anybody got questions, feedback?
What did verse 5 say
In
in NLT?
NLT?
Yeah, I've got ESV
Okay.
and I'm
Okay, yeah. Let me go back to it. It is saying, can you go back to 5? There we go. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember, the Lord is coming soon.
okay.
What-
Consider it.
So what do you got there?
Well, okay, let me read 5 and 6, because it words it. Rejoice in the Lord always is pretty well the same.
Yep.
When I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness, but then down below it says alternative is gentleness.
Right.
Let your reasonableness, gentleness, you're saying consideration,
Yep.
be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving.
Let your requests
requests
be made known to God. Yep. What is that version?
English Standard.
English Standard? Okay, ESV. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes when we read this, that I think there was somewhere else that I was talking about that the English version doesn't come up to. Okay, so I think I said it here. Let everyone see that you're considered in all you do. So the Greek word, right, what I said is epikasi or epikasi or something like that, right? And it actually means, it's a hard word to translate. So considerate, gentle, reasonable, forbearing, right? 4 of the English words. So it's the picture of someone who doesn't insist on their own way, which is what we were saying, right? So in other words, it's someone who's easy to deal with, right? In other words, that their default mode is gentleness. Does that make sense? Yeah. I sometimes like getting other versions out, right? Because I like NLT, but I'm an NIV man, and NIV is, well, that and King James, the old King James, not the new King James. You know, the one that smites people and things like that. So, yeah. Because sometimes you can get different meaning, and I like to go to Greek. I go always back to the Greek. What does the Greek say? So, anybody else? No? Going once, going twice. Sold. Right. Let's pray.